The term Dark Age is kinda problematic because as nowadays we know the Middle Ages wasn't just dirty peasants and ignorance. So why do I use it in the video title? Because since the death of Heraclius, the Roman Empire underwent changes so drastic, the prosperous medieval state that evolved from the antique one feels like a different empire altogether. But our topic today, the early and mid-9th century, is the final stage of this transformation. In today's Eastern Rome Summarized, friends, the Dark Ages of the Eastern Roman Empire are at an end and it will emerge stronger and more unified than ever. With Eirene deposed, Nikephoros I was Roman emperor. He inherited her problems and ironically her policies, heavy focus on the Balkans and support for iconophiles. First, he had to secure his reign. He crowned his son Stavrakios co-emperor and dealt with Eirene's loyalist general Vardanis Turkos in 803. The Themata weren't happy with Nikephoros, who tightened the budget after Eirene's tax cuts, so they proclaimed Turkos emperor. Before revolting, Turkos and his proteges, Leon the Armenian, Michael the Amorian, and Thomas the Slav, saw a hermit, who correctly predicted the imperial fates of the four. Turkos' revolt failed, he was exiled and blinded. Leon and Michael were rewarded for deserting the Nikephoros, who started negotiating the Pax Nikephori with Carolus, which future emperors concluded. Aside from abandoning Eirene's tax cuts, Nikephoros also saved money any way he can, making himself unpopular and refused to pay tribute to Harun al-Rashid, who invaded the empire. Nikephoros faced the Arab army at Crassus, where he suffered a terrible defeat he barely escaped. But as Harun had to face a revolt in 805, Nikephoros seized the chance to upgrade border defenses and raid Cilicia. Meanwhile, the strategos of Hellas retook the Peloponnese from the Slavs. Nikephoros would soon start his great revival of the Balkans. In 806, the emperor elevated an Assycrates of his name to the Patriarchate. The student monks protested a bit, but then Nikephoros took up the meat king controversy again and tried to make emperors above canon law, clashing with the monks. Meanwhile, Harun devastated Anatolia and Cyprus. The Vasilevs could only end this aggression by paying a humiliating tribute, which freed Nikephoros from major concerns in the east and he could continue his work in the Balkans. The Bulgars expanded rapidly under Count Krum, and aware of the threat, Nikephoros expanded the empire's borders up to Sardica in 807, but the Themata revolted so he had to turn back. Soon, the Vasilevs began his policy of resettling Romans in the Balkans, which by 809 were no longer a backwater. Before her deposal, Eirene created the Thema Macedonias in Thrace. Nikephoros continued the trend, militarizing the Balkans by creating several new themata, the Thema Peloponnesu, Thessalonikis, Kefalonias, and possibly the Dyrrachium, and raised the new tagma, the Euganoti. Krum didn't like the growing Roman military presence, so he took Sardica and committed atrocities there. Nikephoros in turn planned a campaign to destroy Bulgaria once and for all, but instead totally destroyed his own forces. In 811, he, Stavrakios, and his son-in-law, Michael Rhangabe, set out with the largest Roman army in the Balkans since the Copronymus days and plundered Pliska. What could have been a great victory turned into a disaster comparable with the Battle of Adrianople as Nikephoros fell prey to the old Roman disease of hubris. The army got undisciplined and cocky as hell while Krum gathered his forces. As the slouchy Roman army marched through Rabica Pass, they found themselves trapped by Bulgars and their allies. Then, their indecisiveness and carelessness caused a slaughter when the Bulgars attacked. Nikephoros was slain, Stavrakios broke his spine, Michael and just a few men escaped while Rome's best was massacred. That barbarian Krum turned Nikephoros' skull into his cup. It's okay, Bulgar Ktonos, your time will come. Such was the legacy of Nikephoros, a capable administrator with grand designs, who saved the Balkans economically but also caused the untimely doom of himself, his dynasty, and countless able men in a totally avoidable disaster. Poor Stavrakios was paralyzed and reigned for only a year, during which all was aware of his limited time, so he tried to organize a smooth succession. He could make his wife Theophilos empress, or his brother-in-law Michael emperor, but in the end he had no say. His officials got the Senate in Tagmata to proclaim Michael while he was unconscious, so Stavrakios had to exile himself. He soon died. The reign of Michael Rhangabe, the first Roman emperor with the surname, was heavily dominated by Patriarch Nikephoros, Abba Theodoros the Studite, and his wife Procopia, who influenced him to be a pious ruler, persecute heretics, and be overgenerous with imperial money. In 812, he recognized Carolus' status as emperor, just not of the Romans, and Venice was back under Roman control. The Bulgars were still a huge threat. When Theodoros got Michael to decline a peace from Krum, Thrace was devastated. Many Romans deserted and more cities were plundered. Michael was very inept at dealing with the barbarians, scoring only a small victory at Adrianople in 813 and felt he could crush Krum. He got the Tagmata, Anatolikon troops under Leon the Armenian, and Macedonia's troops under Ioannis Aplakis to face the Bulgars at Versinikia. Meanwhile, soldiers begged at the tomb of Constantinos V for the deceased warrior to return and save them. Due to inactivity, Michael's incompetence, refusing to help the valorous Aplakis during his attack, and Leon the Armenian's suspicious withdrawal, the Romans lost. Aplakis and most of his men were slain. Michael again fled unharmed, but such a severe defeat 2 years after Vapitsa doomed his imperial career. He abdicated and crowned Leon, who castrated his sons. Leon V's reign was almost exactly a replay of Leon III's. After gaining the throne through questionable means, the Armenian dealt with the siege of Constantinople by Crum. He offered to negotiate with but betrayed the Khan, who angrily devastated Thrace again. Luckily, in 814, Leon crushed the Bulgars near Mesembria and Crum died, so he made a peace with Khan Omertag in 815. He even tried but failed to convert the Bulgars to Christianity. Then, like the Isaurian, the Armenian restored iconoclasm, because he saw the state's misfortunes increase since Eirene and he wanted to be a successful military emperor. So he commissioned intellectuals like Ioannis Grammaticus to find support for this policy. A synod was held. Nikephoros and Theodoros protested, so the former was deposed and the latter imprisoned, but no one else was persecuted. Leon was very capable and spent the next few years restoring Thrace and campaigning successfully against Arabs. He created the Dukaton Chadias, which later became Athema and the Thema Paphlagonias, assigning them under the command of his monostrategos Manuel the Armenian in 819. Then in 820, his buddy Michael the Amorian, the Domesticos ton Excubiton, was suspected of treason. Leon imprisoned and tried to murder his friend in a gruesome way, but his wife Theodosia persuaded him to stay the execution until after Christmas. This gave time for Michael's allies to dress up as clergy and stab Leon to death while he was singing Christmas carols. Then Michael was freed and crowned emperor. Leon the Armenian was a very good emperor, as even iconophiles admit, but he fell prey to the Game of Thrones that elevated himself to his position. Michael II then had to face Thomas the Slav, an old limp but the greatest rebel in East Roman history. He raised a massive base of support after Leon's murder by posing as Constantinos VI, a champion of the disenfranchised and the caliphate's puppet. Michael's only advantage was control of the capital. In 821, Thomas invaded the empire successfully until he crossed to Thrace to besiege Constantinople. His navy was repelled first by strong wind, then by great fire when Michael counterattacked in 822, resulting in a stalemate, which was only broken when Khan Omertag battered the Slavs' army in 823. Michael was desperate, so he decided to fight a pitched battle, but this demoralized men defected to Michael, and the Slavs' last followers held out in Thrace until they were starved to submission. The Vasilevs was lenient on most rebels, but not on Thomas, who wasted 3 years of his reign and was in turn brutally murdered. After the death of his wife, Michael married Constantinos VI's daughter Euphrosyne, who was a nun. This controversial marriage made Theodoros denounce the Vasilevs, who had freed him from prison earlier because while Michael continued iconoclasm, he encouraged reconciliation with iconophiles and kept the practice purely for imperial continuity's sake. He was on fair terms with the Bulgars and Arabs, yet with Abbasid Central Power's decline, Muslim renegades became a problem. Andalusian exiles to Crete in 824, and due to naval weakness after the Civil War, attempts to retake the island failed, though Admiral Nikitas Orifas did evict Arabs from the Aegean Islands. A similar fate befell Sicily. In 826, the Sicilians revolted and called on Arabs for help, who instead started conquering Sicily in 827. Michael died in 829. He was an able ruler but accomplished nothing astonishing, and his life resembled that of Eusebius I, a rough leader of the executors who became emperor and established a dynasty. His son Theophilos, Ioannis Grammaticus' pupil, played the part of Justinian as an educated and competent successor. Theophilos was interesting to say the least. He grew up with stories of Harun al-Rashid, and he imitated his idol's love for justice and accessibility to his people. He punished all of Leon V's killers, and numerous anecdotes tell of how he personally helped his subjects. This gave him a great reputation even among iconophiles, despite his severe iconoclast policies due to influence from his tutor Ioannis. However, he had an iconophile wife, and his stepmother Euphrosyne's brideship for him. After rejecting Cassiani, the future hymnographer, Theophilos chose Theodora, niece of Manuel the Armenian, who had fled to the Abbasids earlier due to a conspiracy. Theophilos knew Manuel's worth, so when he sent Ioannis on a diplomatic mission to awe the court of Baghdad in 830, he made sure his tutor got his general back, and acquired plans for the Abbasid palace which he used to renovate his own. Despite Theophilos' love for Arab culture, his reign saw intense warfare with them. Caliph Mamun assaulted Anatolia and took a few Roman fortresses, and in 831, Cilician Arabs raided, but Theophilos crushed them with Manuel and had a triumph, while Mamun continued heavily pressuring Rome until he died in 833. More luckily, in 834, the Kuramites, Persian rebels who troubled the Abbasids for years, joined the Romans. Theophilos created the Persian Tuma from them and made a trusted Hellenized Persian, Theophilus, their commander. With this revigorated army, he and his Caesar Alexius Musil struck the Bulgars, reconquering a bit of Thrace in 836 and saving some Romans deported to Bulgarian Krumste, including a certain Basileus. Then he turned his army eastwards in 837, captured cities in Mesopotamia, destroyed Zapetra, Caliph al-Mutazim's birthplace, and went home for another triumph. In 838, al-Mutazim struck back. Theophilus tried to stop him but was defeated and almost killed at Dazimon. Then Arabs took Ankara, and with the traitors' help, Amorian too, the cradle of the Amorian Dynasty. They sacked the city to the ground and massacred everyone. The only 42 survivors became martyrs. This shocked the empire and Theophilus, undermined iconoclasm, and drove him to fortify the eastern border, where he created some Klaisurite, soon to become Themata, Coloneas, Charsiano, Cappadocias, and Seleucias. He sent Alexius to retake Sicily but called him back in 839 due to intrigue. The Kuramites who fled from Dazimon proclaimed Theophilus as emperor, who was surprisingly loyal and helped Theophilus quell the revolt peacefully. The Vasilevs then created the Klimata Chersonos to protect his Khazar allies against the Rus. For the next few years, his health faltered while he tried to get the Franks to help him against the Arabs to no avail. Border conflicts continued until al-Mutazim finally planned a major offensive in 842, but his fleet sunk and he died. Theophilus' health finally failed and he died the same month. To secure succession for his son Michael, he ordered the popular Theophilus to be killed. It was said that he tried to see Cassiani one last time before he died and repented from iconoclasm on his deathbed. He was the last iconoclast emperor, and with him ended iconoclasm. Theophilus was a great emperor, with even greater potential. Despite his failures, his reign was highly beneficial for the empire. Now the Romans are truly in recovery. In 843, Empress Theodora, young Michael's regent, restored icon veneration after her husband's death. After replacing the iconoclast clergy with loyal iconophiles, on March 11th, Empress Theodora, Emperor Michael, and Patriarch Methodius made a triumphal procession and restored orthodoxy to the empire. This event was the triumph of orthodoxy and ended major theological disputes between Romans for centuries. Then Theodora sent her Logothetes to Dromu, Theoktistos, to retake Crete. The eunuch was successful at first and created Themacrates and maybe the Thema Aegiopelagus, but returned to the capital due to false rumors. Abandoning the campaign ruined the expedition, since in 844 the emir of Melitene, Umar al-Akhta, attacked Anatolia and Theoktistos was heavily defeated at Mavropotamos. He blamed it on Theodora's brother Vardas, who was exiled. As both sides couldn't continue the fight, they had a truce and exchanged prisoners in 845. For the next few years, Theodora kept the empire relatively safe and prosperous while persecuting a sect of heretics in eastern Anatolia known as the Paulicians. In 846, the raiding Bulgars were opposed. In 847, Methodius died and was replaced by Michael Rhangabe's son Ignatius, who represented the empire's zealous monastics. Despite failure to retake Sicily in 848 and raids from the emir of Tarsus starting from 851, the Roman military was recovering swiftly. In 853, they sacked Damietta in Egypt and devastated the emirate of Tarsus in 855. The Bulgars got aggressive again, but Theodora told them off. That year, the teenage Michael took a mistress, Evdokia Ingerina, but was forced to marry Evdokia Decapolitica by his mother. Fearing he'd end up like Constantinos VI, Michael got his uncle Vardas out of exile and with the help of another uncle Petronas, murdered Theoktistos. Theodora was so pissed that she accepted being deposed in 856. Michael III was then sole ruler, but he was aware of his incompetence in governing, so left that to Vardas, who was made Caesar. Vardas was luckily as capable as his sister, and with him the Roman Empire flourished even more. He and Petronas saw a string of Roman victories in the east and made their nephew take part in some of them. By that time, the bitter Paulicians allied with the emir of Melitene and had their own principality. In 856, Petronas raided the emirate all the way to Amida, and in 857, Michael sent another expedition against Melitene. Vardas drastically improved urban life and secular learning. He reformed the Pandidacterion and supported scholars like Photius, who replaced the thorn in Vardas' side Ignatius as patriarch in 858. In 859, Michael led a siege of Samosata but had to return to Constantinople because the Rus surprise attacked in 860. He and Photius basically prayed the Rus off with holy relics. The next year, a council in Constantinople confirmed Photius' status as patriarch, but in 863, Pope Nicholas I reversed the decision to impose papal supremacy, starting the Photian Schism, which was worsened when Photius sent two brilliant brothers to Christianize the Slavs. Saints Cyril and Methodius created a written language for the Slavs, Old Church Slavonic, which they translated liturgical books into to promote their religion, to the horror of Latin missionaries who wanted linguistic unity. Meanwhile, in the east, Petronas won the Battle of Lalakon, slaying Alacta, the Paulician leader Cabeas, and countless other Arabs and Paulicians. The Romans then invaded Armenia and killed the Emir of Tarsus. Michael greeted his uncle with a glorious triumph, and in 864 they invaded Bulgaria, showing Count Boris the might of Rome. Boris decided then to convert his realm to Christianity, so the apostles of the Slavs introduced Slavonic to them as well. Rome wasn't pleased but became delighted when Boris wanted independence for his church in 865 and asked for their help. Rome tried to introduce the Bulgars to their brand of Christianity and the Filioque heresy, to the horror of Constantinople. The schism intensified and became a cold war for influence in Bulgaria between the two powers, which got so bad that Michael threatened to bring his army to Rome, but poor Vardas wouldn't live to see its end. For several years now, the aforementioned Vasileios the Macedonian had been at Michael's court, rising from his strator to his chamberlain, and earning his affection to the point where Vasileios married Evdokia and Gerina. He was aware that Vardas was troubled by his growing influence, so he convinced Michael that his uncle was plotting, and while Vardas was preparing to go to Crete in 866, Vasileios murdered the Caesar who laid the foundation for the Macedonian Renaissance. Michael made his maid Caesar instead, and the two ruled together, overseeing a synod in 867 which excommunicated the Pope, ending the schism. But soon the partnership fell apart and Vasileios killed his friend with some conspirators, and that was the end of Michael and the Amorian Dynasty. Michael had the odious nickname the Drunkard, for he was a pleasure seeker, but his reign saw much success due to the competency of his mother and uncles. Under Vasileios, the empire would soon reach its apogee. At the start of this video, the Romans were in a mess, but now at the end, they achieved ecclesiastical unity, relative prosperity, and military success. The next time we see the Macedonian Renaissance start to take place, and oh boy, I am excited! See you all soon, and thanks a bunch for watching.